Hi guys, welcome back to the weird side of YouTube. I'm your ghost host with the most, author DC Knipe, and this, I believe, is the Reading Storm, the show where I talk about things I like to read, and this is Horror Month, October. So today we are going to be talking about my love of horror literature and my history with horror in general, whether that's books, movies, well, not video games, that's a separate video, but books or movies, because that's writing. And mostly books this episode, though. I don't want to focus too much on movies or cinema. This is Trouble. He's one of the kittens my cat Hallie just had. She ran away, got pregnant as a teenager, and came back home for us to take care of the babies. Teen pregnancy. We don't condone it, but it happens. Anyway. Horror literature. My favorites, the first horror book, well, story ever to be conceived, and what I used to like in horror, compared to what I like now. So let's get started and let's get weird.
We were dead a long time ago. We've been ghosts since days of old. We were dead a long time ago. We're the ghosts of the stories you've told. We were dead a long time ago. We've been ghosts since the days of old. We were dead a long time ago.
Alright, so I have notes. Trouble, please don't. Okay. The Castle of Otranto is said to be the first horror story in a legitimate literary form. It was written in 1765 by one Horace Walpole. That's a fun fact for you. There we go. Sorry, it is laundry day, so I had no sheets. But my favorites when it comes to books, Trouble, please stop. He is never going to behave. What do you have to say for yourself? You've been caught on camera. Misbehaving. Go to your mom. Okay. My favorite when it comes to books, let's get started on when I was a kid. So my love for horror came out when I started watching Tales of the Crypt, and The X-Files. And I was very young when I started watching these, like 6 or 7 or 8. And my mom was like, if you like that, you'll probably like... Because my mom was a horror buff, too. Stephen King was her all-time favorite writer. Of course, she did not give me Stephen King books to read, because I don't know if he has any kid-friendly books now, but back then he certainly didn't. And so she got me this. Not this actual copy, but a 3-book collection of the Scary Stories children's books. And she also got me a bunch of Edgar Allan Poe works, which I still love to this day. Edgar Allan Poe is my favorite poet. Possibly my favorite writer of all time, to be honest. But this made me fall in love with reading horror, as Edgar Allan Poe did as well. Ghost stories, anything like that. Eventually I did branch off into things like... Well, first with Edgar Allan Poe, I went to like Mary Shelley Frankenstein. She also has other horror stories. And then from that, I started getting into like vampires, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, and eventually eventually Anne Rice's Immortal Universe, which gives you vampires. I think ghosts are in it as well, and witches. They have a whole series of shows for it now based on it, and I actually love the what's the word? The updated version of it that they have on TV now, where they changed Louis to a black man in the 1920s or 30s, and it's really, really good. But then came along like your Stephen King's, and my favorite Stephen King books are Misery and Carrie. I love the movies of it and the miniseries that came out in like the 80s, but I don't like the book. The book has... Well, Stephen King did a lot of questionable stuff when he was young because he was on cocaine all the time. He doesn't even remember writing Cujo, his book about basically a crazy dog that eats people. But he did some questionable shit in the It book that I don't find appealing, so I don't think I'll ever read it. But you can just Google it and see what it is. I'm not saying it on this channel. But yeah, there's also H.P. Lovecraft, which I like his creations, like Cthulhu, and like lore a lot more than his actual writing or him as a person, because you get into the subject of like separating art from the artist, but a lot of his art is still racist and very much blatantly so. So a lot of his actual writing, like from him, I don't really like, but I do like adaptions of his work. Now, this branched off into like reading all kinds of horror and watching all kinds of horror. I was really into American Horror Story for a bit until the writing took a dip. Sorry guys, I was into American Horror Story for a bit and now I'm really into like Netflix's version of American Horror Story, which is like the new one is House of Usher. There was like House on Haunted Hill or Haunted Hill House, and that was really good. And also Midnight Mass was fabulous. I loved Midnight Mass. The writing is amazing. I know the guy's name, but I can't think of it now. It's all by one person, and I call it Netflix's American Horror Story because he recast the same people in it. And my kitten is being really freaking annoying right now. He wasn't even supposed to be in here, but oh well. This is my horror story. This is my American Horror Story. Nah, I love him. He's a sweetheart. Alright, go to mama. And I also I loved The Ring and The Ring 2 and The Unborn when it came out. I tried to sit down and watch it with my partner a few days ago, and I was really excited to get him to see it because in my mind it's been this paragon of horror since like it came out in like 2006. And but no, it's really cheesily written, and the aesthetics of it aren't really up to par with anything these days. So I just kind of laughed at it. Also, my tastes in horror have changed. They used to be like anything supernatural. You got your witchcraft, demonic possession, ghosts, and vampires. And nowadays, now that I'm an atheist, I prefer a lot of that, but with a part of it that's actually grounded in reality, and that usually comes in the form of like your main character is mentally ill and hallucinating or something like that, or in an asylum. I also really like slashers now, which I really didn't used to. I used to only be afraid of like demons and shit because of religious trauma, and now I'm actually terrified of things that actually could happen, which makes more sense to me. But yeah, I love horror. Horror has been a part of my life. My life is a horror story in a lot of ways, and I don't know. I've always really enjoyed reading it, writing it. Even when I was writing strictly fantasy, I was always putting elements of horror into it, like hardcore horror. Not just gore, not just blood, which it has its place. I'm not gonna, shit on it. But the real visceral horror for me is like dread and uneasiness and things that just things that are fucked up in a weird way that aren't quite right, that are askew and just strange. That's horror for me, and I love it. Which brings me to a new kind of horror in movies, at least, called elevated horror, which I've watched 2 of these movies that are so-called elevated horror, which is Hereditary and what was the other one? Midsummer. I loved Midsummer. I adored it. But I didn't consider it horror. It was like a Disney princess movie to me. And I know a lot of people are like, it's got underlining racism in it, and I didn't see that. I didn't see anything racist about the movie. I saw a cult that a very troubled young woman fell into, but at the same time, it seemed like a Disney princess movie. like they made you feel, the first time, at least for me, they made you feel like, okay, her boyfriend's an asshole, he deserves this. But he was sexually assaulted. Spoilers, I apologize. The boyfriend was sexually assaulted. Upon further watching this movie after the first time, he was a victim. He did not deserve to be sexually assaulted and murdered. He was an asshole, but neither here nor there. Hereditary, however, I adored. I loved it. I worshipped it. I ate it up. Until the end. Until the end. And now I will never watch it again. That was a waste of however many minutes of my life. And I will stand on that hill and I will die on it. Hereditary is a horrible movie because of the ending. I was so excited that they were finally doing something like supernatural, but like the twist is that nothing's really happening and that the kid's just insane because the mom is insane, and that's Hereditary. That's what the Hereditary is, because it's mental illness. And I thought that was so fucking cool, and then now it's a fucking cult of old naked people. And I know people are like, I hated the end because they were naked people and it was gross. I don't give a shit about nudity. Run around naked in front of, like, the Pope. I don't give a fuck. I don't care that they're old either. Nudity is natural. I don't like the writing of the ending, and it was atrocious, and I will never watch that movie ever again in my entire fucking life, and you cannot fucking make me. I'm scaring my kitten. Hey, it's okay. His mom's talking to him. But yeah, elevated horror, it's either not horror or it shits itself right at the end. So, and it's like supposed to be this, like, it's horror, but it's dramatic and it's emotional. Horror has always been emotional. I understand what you're trying to do. You're just not doing it very well. Horror has always been emotional. That's the whole entire point of it. I like horror because I like seeing people go through trauma and how they heal of it afterwards. That to me is horror. You take someone, put them in some really fucked up situation, have them go all the way through it, and then at the end they get a happily ever after and get over it. That is horror for me. And obviously they don't have to have a happily ever after, but I hate horror movies that end with everybody dead. Because that just seems like I wasted my time watching it. I couldn't imagine reading a whole ass fucking novel and every character dies at the end. I would be furious. That is horrible writing in my opinion, because it makes your entire story moot and pointless. There is nothing. There's nothing. You wasted my time. I got nothing out of that. So, a story is only as good as its ending. And if you don't have an ending, you don't got a story. Like, example, Saw. I think the first Saw movie, everybody dies. And like in every Saw movie, everybody dies. But the series keeps going. So I was holding on to a hope for that. I don't even remember how the Saw series ended. I don't think it did, because there's a new movie of it in theaters now. But because of that, I just eventually, like, got bored with it. The first Saw movie I watched, I hated it. And then when they got a sequel, I was like, oh, okay, what are they gonna do? But then, like, they keep giving me a breadcrumb to follow, and it's I don't think it's leading anywhere. So there's a lot of things in horror that I love, and a lot of things in horror that I just completely dislike. So I guess that's just life for you. But elevated horror is, it seems a little snobbish to me. I haven't seen The Witch because it just didn't look interesting to me, even though I used to be pagan. And I know that's considered elevated horror or whatever, which makes me not want to watch it. I also really don't like stupid, pointless sex scenes in horror movies, especially like slashers that just get naked women and tits on the screen for no reason. That annoys the shit out of me. If the sexuality on screen is like contributing to the character's stories or their arc or teaching them something, then fine, show it. Like, say if a character is gay and he's repressing his sexuality, and this is like also some kind of horror for him through like religious trauma or whatever, I could get that. But like just throwing tits on the screen is cringe. Cringe as fuck, actually. And I know that's become like a staple of horror or whatever, which really is a shame. Also, horror movies that just completely happen to kids in high school, I don't like. I don't want to follow a bunch of kids in high school. Give me somebody in their 20s at least, 30s preferably, even older. Like, I want to see a fucking grandma kick a serial slasher's ass. Give me that. But yeah, I'm going off on tangents here. My suggestions for if you're a child trying to get into horror, hopefully you're not watching this, but if you are a parent and you have a child that wants to get into horror, definitely pick this up. They're short stories, they're kid-friendly. Some of them are spooky, but none of them are scary. None of them are gory or bloody or violent. Some of them are spooky, but none of them are really scary. The art is a little freaky though. And beyond that, Edgar Allan Poe would be a good introduction if you're an adult. Honestly, probably Stephen King, because I feel like when it comes to novels, he is the master of horror. I love Carrie. I love Misery. I love the movies of it. Like I said, I don't really like the books. But, yeah, if you're an adult and you want to get into horror, when it comes to books, I would go with the Stephen King route. He's still alive and he's still writing books. So, even though he's like ancient. No offense, I'm ancient too. But, yeah. That is my thoughts on horror literature, and I hope this wasn't too rambly. It probably was. My editor Theodore is going to have a field day with it. Speaking of, here he is with, this is Lucy, and this is Theodore. I love you guys, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.
We were dead a long time ago. We've been ghosts since days of old. We were dead a long time ago. We're the ghosts of the stories you've told. We were dead a long time ago. We've been ghosts since the days of old. We were dead a long time ago. Ghosts in the scary stories you've told. Shadows in the moonlight. Creatures in the trees. Glowing eyes surround me as I question all I've seen. The past has come to haunt me. From within my shallow grave, my memories come in